Well, let me tell you the first one. Before this, I used to work for the traveling college on Cornwall Island in Akwesasne. And as I worked there, part of my job was to go into the grade school and the middle school and tell stories and explain about clans and even to do Mohawk language, but more the cultural, spiritual part to the children and the history. And one time, when I was in there, we were in the library, and it had books, hundreds of books on the walls and in the middle, in the aisles. And when I finished doing the presentation one time, there was a little boy, a little Mohawk boy. He was about around 9 or 10 years old. And he says to me, when I'm ready to go, he says, "Uncle," and that was nice that he said that, because he's not really my relative, but he had been learning the proper respect the art culture teaches, and so he called me uncle. And that's right for him to do that. And I was proud of him. So I listened to him, what he had to say, because he did the proper thing. He says, "Uncle, look it." He said, "You finished and you told us about our history and our clans and what it means and how it works." And he said, "We like to listen to that because nobody else talks about it or tells us where we live, our home. So unless we come here, we don't know nothing about it, because our fathers and mothers don't say nothing about it for whatever reason, and there'll be many reasons." And so he said, "Uncle, you see the books on the shelves along the walls? It goes all the way around. There's one shelf, another shelf, all the way up. Even you have to use a chair to reach it, the top shelf. Out of those hundreds of books and thousands of books," he said, "do you know," and this is the St. Regis, the Mohawk school, this school. Nobody else goes to school, just only us Mohawk. But did you know that not one of those books that's in our library, not one of them is about or belong to us. It's all somebody, we don't know who they are, writing about everything under the sun, but we don't know who they are. And so even though it belongs to us, this library, the Mohawks, none of those books really is ours." He says, "Do you know what I'm talking about? You're only 10 years old." And I says, "I know what you're talking about." So he says, "Uncle, how about it? Can you try to write a book like the stuff you're telling us all the time? Can you write it in a book form? And then when you finish, we're going to put it on a shelf. And of all the hundreds of books we have, then we Mohawk kids can say, this one book is ours. It's belonged to us." And he made me cry. That little kid wasn't a kid. He was a grown-up man, and he's only 10. The way he used his mind. And I said to him, "I heard you, what you are asking. And so let me think about it." So I went back to the traveling college, and I asked the director and whoever, I said, "The little kids over there, one of them wants us to write a book so they can have their own book." And they said, the director said, "Well, when are you going to start? We'll back you up. We'll go to publisher. We'll hire a secretary for you. Anything you want, just they'll follow you or whatever you want to do. Or you want to write it, and then we'll fix the grammar so that it's presentable for a book. So I said, I'll start tomorrow. I start tomorrow. By golly, there was a secretary to take all the notes and help me write. And we had an illustrator to draw a picture. And we wrote the book called Cleanology. That was the first book. There's not even no word in a Webster's dictionary that says cleanology. I coined that English word with a hoodoo-shoony twist. So now Webster's got it in there now too, I think. If they don't, we better holler at them. It's called Cleanology book. Oops. Did you hear that? Listen, wait, listen.
Nice to see you.
Hello, darling. I shut it off. I forgot I had that in my pocket. Excuse me. But it was fun anyway. And so we wrote the book called Cleanology. And now they have that in there. And not only that one, but we wrote some more books. And they have not only one now. Yeah. But anyway, I think that's the first time I did write a book for the kids. And then this book is about the third or fourth book that I wrote. And I never went to high school in my life. But I did anyway, write the book. And so I was at Ganachuhalege in the Mohawk Valley where I live, the community I live. And this happened about 8 years ago. I was in my living room, because it's a big building, a complex. And while I was there, it was 11 o'clock at night, wintertime, snow all over the place. And I was painting pine boards, 4-inch by 1-inch pine board that I'm going to use as a floor, what do you call it, for the floor and the wall, mop board. Yeah, so I was painting it all white. And we're renovating the place to make it look nice and pretty. And I was all by myself, had sawhorses and paint all over, newspaper all over, working almost midnight to do this. All of a sudden, as I'm turned this way, I turned around and I felt somebody come in the door. And I looked. It was my grandma. She's been dead for 35 years. She's been gone. That was her standing there. And she says, Salaksan. That's what she said. I don't know how you translate Salaksan in English, but a lot of Mohawks likes to say that. Salaksan. I still don't know how to interpret that, but it's equivalent in English to doggone it. Something equivalent to that kind of expression. That means I just, doggone it, I just barely was able to find you. That's what she said. Because where I live now is 250 miles south of the reservation. And she buried up there, see? So I imagine she had a hard time coming through the mountains or whatever. But nevertheless, I was so happy to see her. Because I loved my grandma more than anything in the whole world.